Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Madhava Punya Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Punya Bihari, Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवनधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रजजन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रजजन रंजन यमुना तीर वनचारी यमुना तीर वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय मंश परिभ्राजकाचार्य जय आनंद कोटि राधा कृष्ण को गोपनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड वृंदावन धाम की जय नवदीप धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय द्वारका धाम की जय स्वामी भक्तवृंद की जय और ग्लोरी टू और ग्लोरी टू थैंक यू वेरी मच
in New York and Philadelphia and Paris.
Hare Krishna.
This DocuSign makes it easier for me to do business. When I think of work, I think of
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Sri Adwaita Krishna Prabhu, please accept the humble obeisances. Hare Krishna. All glories to Guru, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Good to see you. Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Yes.
So I see there are a few devotees, but we can put the text on the screen and then you start. I believe devotees will join later.
Yes, sure. Sure.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Kushada's Prabhu. Nice to see
Adi
you again.
Samaraj, Mangala Besas, Hare Krishna. How are you doing?
Gayatri Devi and Loka Devi. I must know them, but I probably forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, you can put the Sanskrit on. Thank you so much. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right, so thank you very much for giving me this opportunity again to speak on this chapter and verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is my third time I'm given this opportunity to speak to the devotees in Africa and other devotees. And this is a beautiful chapter about Lord Bhishma Dev. And today we are reading the text 9. So we will do our invocation and then we will start with this verse and we'll read the purport. Hare Krishna, thank you again. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mutire. Asta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Utama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Kradarada Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Tan Sametan Mahabhagan Upalabhya vasuttama Pujayanga sadharmagyo deshakala vibhagavet. So you can bring it down. Or should I have here? Hare Krishna. A little bit further up. I can't read it. Anyway, let me just get my content here. I have my iPad, so it's also sometimes.
Okay.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So Bhishma Dev, who was the best among the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers of the world executed the mission by adjustments of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world. And if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of the time and place. Bhishma Dev was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this cult of devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed from all parts of the universe. He was certainly unable at the time to welcome and receive them physically because he was neither at his home nor in a normal, healthy condition. But he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with hearty expressions, and all of them were well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by mind, and by words. And he knew well how to utilize them in the proper place. And therefore, there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamrupa Kadamayam Dadatu Sapadantikam Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Adwaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you again very much. Seek the blessings of my seniors and the best wishes of my friends so that I can speak a few words in glorification of Lord Bhishma Dev and the beautiful purport of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So thank you again for joining. Is it possible I can just enlarge that and put it on? Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. Jai Shri Krishna. So, Bhishma Dev, Bhishma means one who has taken incredible vows. And his vows were particularly severe and staunch and considered to be out of the ordinary because he was from the Kshatriya stock. And being from like in a Kshatriya family, the most difficult vow would be actually to be celibate because Kshatriyas perform not so well when they are not married. And the particular stance, Arjuna lost one of his battles because he was not properly situated. And in that case, he was not married. So he took a vow, and when he took that vow that he's not going to marry because he had given his sort of credentials to his father, so to speak, by promise. So it was very difficult, and all the demigods said, wow, this is an impossible vow to keep. And therefore he became known as Devavrata. Devavrata means one who keeps his vows. So he's a great personality, and he's considered to be one of the Mahajans. And very interesting pastimes in the 9th chapter of the 1st canto, where Lord Krishna personally accompanies the Pandava brothers dressed in the attire and presenting himself in this manner that is most desirable by Bhishma Dev. He wanted to see his Lord Krishna in this way, as Parthasarthi, as charioteer, as being the friend and the relative of the Pandavas, whom he so wanted them to be victorious. Very beautiful. Even though he was fighting against them, all his wishes were for the Pandavas to be victorious. So there was nothing more pleasing to him than to see that Lord Krishna accompanied them, led them actually. The decision to take them was obviously given to Yudhishthira Maharaj, because to go there was obviously given to Yudhishthira Maharaj because he was Maharaj. And Krishna asked him, would you like me to take you to Bhishma Dev? And if Bhishma Dev gave you instructions to sit on the seat of the emperor, and would you then accept? Because there was a lot of lamentation, a lot of difficulties in the heart and mind of Yudhishthira Maharaj, and he was feeling beside himself because he thought that all this battle was fought so that he could become king. And he was thinking, even if I go to the hellish planets and suffer for thousands of years, all the sins that have happened here, I will not be able to pay them back. And he was in deep lamentation. Before the battle, Arjuna was in deep lamentation. That lasted for a couple of hours. But Bhishma Dev was going on, Yudhishthira Maharaj was going on for about a month. And he was accompanied by so many great sages, which was explained in the previous 2 verses. And all the sages were there. Vyasadeva was there, Narad Muni was there, Domya Rishi was there, Somya Rishi was there, Parvat Muni was there, Narad Muni was there. And they were taking turns each and every day, just talking to Bhishma Dev, talking to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Please, Maharaj, there's so many praja, so many citizens are without protection. Please, Maharaj, please take this position. And he was beside himself. That was the arrangement of Krishna. Because Yudhishthira Maharaj, at one point, he was thinking, he was saying that something telling me that I should do, but at the same time, something inside me is not letting me do. And that was Krishna. Krishna from outside was trying to tell him, take on the position of the emperor. And as Paramatma, he was trying to goad him not to. Because he had arranged, Lord Krishna had arranged that Lord Bhishma Dev be glorified in front of all the elite of the universe by actually instructing one of the most saintly kings ever to walk the earth to be taught by Bhishma Dev. So therefore, this was arranged. So when all the sages realized that there is going to be a beautiful discussion, the Bhishma and Yudhishthir sort of discussion, they all were very eager and they all came to that place. And that was a meeting of the elite of the universe. And they would now hear this wonderful Gangaputra, Devavrata Bhishma, who was an incredible personality. And he would speak and he would teach about management, the duties of a king, how to manage, to Yudhishthira Maharaj. So obviously that was a very illustrious gathering, very wonderful. When you really read the beautiful purports and delve into it, it is really very, very nice. And there's also a lot of rasa going on between Bhishma and Sri Krishna, because they are actually, Bhishma Dev is a wonderful devotee. He's a Mahajan. So how how is this played out? Because simply because Krishna Bhagwan, Lord Sri Krishna, he wanted Bhishmadev glorified. And therefore he could have arranged for Yudhishthir to understand his responsibilities. Even though so many saintly personalities were there, even Vyasadeva was advising him, and he would not accept any of the advice. But then when he was asked, would you listen to the advice of Bhishmadev? He said yes. And once Yudhishthir Maharaj had answered, yes, I will, there's no going back, because his word is like, chiseled on stone. So then he said, okay. So then that was almost kind of finalized, that Bhishmadev, even though he fought against Yudhishthir Maharaj, his desire was to have Yudhishthir Maharaj as king. And just today also I was reading the section where Krishna arranged for the burdens of the earth, which would have been his descendants in the Yadukul, to be removed. And I was reflecting very deeply on this point, that Krishna does so much arrangements to remove so many millions and millions of people who followed the Kauravas, because they were actually inept. They were not Krishna conscious. They were not going to be good rulers. And for what? He actually did that, and then Yudhishthira Maharaj was on the throne for just a very short period of time. And we see also the same thing is happening when Parikshit Maharaj was on the throne. He was also on the throne for a very short period of time, and Krishna arranged for us to get Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Krishna arranged to remove all the Yadukul, from the surface of the earth, because they could have become potentially very, very corrupted. So looking at the situations of the world, I will come back to the purport. I just want to situate this a little bit. Looking at the situation in the world, I'm led to reflect more and more on Prabhupada's first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where he talks so intensely about the importance of having good rulers, the importance of having first-class persons leading the world. Because if we had first-class people leading the world, we would not have half the degradation, the suffering, the pain, the sins, and the utter degradation that is coming because of Kali Yuga. Parikshit Maharaj, he held back Kali Yuga for a long period of time in his reign, because the day Krishna passed, left this world, Kali Yuga was already waiting at the door. But then Parikshit Maharaj stopped that. So just reflecting now with all the situations that is happening in the world, it's very, very difficult when you know that you don't have powerful spiritual personalities like Parikshit Maharaj or Yudhishthira Maharaj, Arjuna, who would be actually the best rulers in the world. So he was taught the Kshatriya Dharma by Bhishmadev. So Bhishmadev is a Mahajana. And of course, in our movement, our Srila Prabhupada is our Mahajan. In that purport, let me just get that purport back here. And okay, so Prabhupada is talking about how Bhishmadev was lying on his deathbed of hundreds of arrows, and he was not in a healthy condition, but then still he perfectly knew how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. And all the great acharyas or religious preachers or performers of the world executed the mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. So this situation of Desh Kala Patra, time, place, and circumstances. Desha means place, Kala means time, and Patra means circumstances or those who are to receive. Patra means, in a way, circumstance or those who are to receive. Patra means container, so to speak. So Desh Kala Patra. So all the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers in the world, they have executed, Prabhupada is saying here, the mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. So there are different different levels to which we adjust to time and place. All of us are called to use our practical intelligence to preach, to talk, to present the message of Krishna consciousness. We have different styles we adopt. We have different aspects of humanity that we have to consider who we are talking to. And Prabhupada is saying that those who are taking on this message of being of the Lord and who are preaching, they have to be expert in adjusting things in terms of time and place. So yes, we have two levels of adjustments, right? The one level of adjustments is sort of micro adjustments. I call it micro adjustments that we all have to adjust. If you're going out on book distribution, or if you're doing some kirtan, or we're doing other aspects of devotional service, then we have to be intelligent and we have to use our intelligence to adjust. We adjust according to traditions. We adjust according to cultures. There are different sometimes marriage rules. One thing that particularly struck me when I was in West Africa, and I was in Ivory Coast, and I had met some of the devotees there, and especially some of the Grihastha devotees. And I come from a different culture, so I saw that some of the God brothers there, they had a different marriage arrangements, and some of them had maybe more than one wife, some of them had 2 or 3 wives. So I was a little bit bewildered about that. So on one of the phone calls I talked to Gurudev, I asked him, I said, how do you adjust to all these things? It's a different culture. It's a different culture. So I also noticed, and I said, but and at that time, whatever I knew, I said, but some of the Grihastha devotees, the men are following, but the ladies are not following. So how do you manage to give them Brahman initiation where in the house, some of them may not be following all the different principles? So he said, you will learn. It's a place of extreme. And he said to me, he said, just stay broad-minded and be Krishna conscious and give the best. And he told me like that. And he said, because it's a different culture. And it's a fact, it's a completely different culture. And devotees have different patterns of behavior. People are living in different cultures. People have different habits. Like the funeral habits in Ghana was quite a bit of a shock to me. So how do you adjust? How do you adjust to all of these? You have to adjust, and you have to explain the message of Krishna consciousness. So these are practical adjustments that we have to use our intelligence. And sometimes you cannot go in there, and try to impose all the different principles of Krishna consciousness without understanding the cultural rules and habits of people. So the general principle here applies that Rupa Goswami says, Yena tena prakarena Krishna bhakti nivishayet. What we do is one way or the other, we bring people closer to Krishna one step at a time. If people agree to at least visit the temple, that is something. Then if people start to take a book, that is something. So we adjust, and some people will come to Krishna consciousness faster and at a higher speed than others. Others will go, will follow maybe 2 principles, 3 principles. One thing that shocked me, Maharaj, when I went to Togo, and I remember we went to a Namhata program there, accompanied by our senior friend Prabhu, and he said, and he took me to one of the Namhatas. It was very interesting. And then the person that was conducting the Namhata there, he was sitting, with a table, and there was a candle, and there was a Bible, and there was a Gita, and there was a copy of the Bhagavatam. And then, we witnessed how they conduct the Namhata and so on and so forth. And then I was introduced and I was meant to speak. But then before that, all the devotees were sitting there. They were talking about their personal sort of situation of how they were progressing or how they were practicing. And most of them was telling me they're practicing this way and that way. But one thing that struck me that day was this. They were all a lot of them were chanting 16 rounds, and a lot of them were even chanting more than 16 rounds, and some were chanting 8 rounds. But then none of them told me that they're following 4 regulatory principles. So then, well, when I asked at the end, and I said, but why is it that you are unable to follow 4 regulatory principles? And you know what was the answer? The answer was simply, Prabhuji, we don't know how to cook without using fish sauce, because in Togo, fish sauce was such a... I mean, that's amazing. But you know, this was a big lesson for me, Mara. This was a big lesson for me. And I realized that actually people can be devotees in all situations. And I said, and my mind just straight away went to Jagannath Puri that day. And I thought, well, the Shabara community, servants of Lord Jagannath, I'm not condoning fish eating. Please don't get me and don't move me out of the platform. I'm not condoning any of that, but just thinking how it was interesting that these devotees were practicing Krishna consciousness. He said, but we didn't know how to cook without fish sauce. And we arranged to have a cooking class on the Sunday program to show them, because I'm a bit of a cook, so to show them how we can cook without fish sauce. So it was interesting that, you know, according to that, so it made me, it forced me to learn something, that if their particular circumstance, the patra, the people who are preaching to, and their particular situation is such, it will not deter them from trying to practice Krishna consciousness. One step at a time. Yena tena prakarena Krishna bhakti nivishayet. One step at a time. And I think Krishna, being a person, he would understand. He would perfectly understand that this is a situation. And if in West Africa, if devotees are used to marrying 2 wives and having 20 kids, then also Krishna would understand this is a culture that they're brought up with. So that was a great eye-opener for me. It was that actually made me grow. And I realized that, no, we have to look at the bigger picture of how these devotees are trying to be Krishna conscious. And they've done very well. They're still doing very well, despite having all these difficulties in the beginning. So this is a great example of Desh Kala Patra, I think, time, place, and circumstance. And it doesn't deter anyone. So, and they're now becoming, you know, they're able to get initiated. They practice Krishna consciousness, follows 4 regulatory principles. So it starts from the lower rungs, and then they climb up the ladder and become Krishna conscious in a fully authorized manner. So these are little adjustments that we can see, we can perceive, and we can adjust our minds and preach. But then there are the other major applications by the Sampradaya Acharyas. How do they adjust, and how do they innovate? And our Sampradaya is very dynamic. And one thing we learned in our discussions at the VIHE is that the practice and the principles of Krishna consciousness, they're not stunted, they're not stilted, they're not like cast in concrete. Even though the basic principles are very clearly explained in Shastra, but they're not stilted, they're not like immovable. And how did we learn that? Because the essential principle of devotional or spiritual life, it is not just reading Shastra, it is not just jumping from one Vedic literature to another, whether it is Atharva Ved, Rig Ved, Sama Ved, this Ved, that Ved, or the Puranas, or the Itihasas, or Vedanta. It is not just that. It is not just that. This has become just mental speculation. If we try to adjust and understand all the different applications and from the Shastra, and we rigorously apply it, this will not give us the essence of spiritual life. The essence of spiritual life, even though the mother that contains the truth is actually the scripture, it doesn't give us the essence of spiritual life. And this is explained in the Bhishma Parva, interestingly. Oh, is it the Bhishma Parva? Of the Mahabharata, in that particular verse in Madhya Lila, and Prabhupada quotes that verse, Tarko Pratishta Sutaya Vibhinna, Nasa Munir Yasya Matam Nabhinam, Dharmasya Tattvam Nihitam Guhaya, Maha Jana Yena Gathasa Pantha. This beautiful explanation in that purport, Srila Prabhupada says that by speculating or by discussing tarka means, going backward and forward and trying to understand these principles. Tarko pratishta, and using all your intelligence and crisscrossing and trying to jump from here and understand this and understand that. Tarko pratishta, shrutaya vibhinna, so many different literatures, Vedic, in our Vedic tradition. Naso muniriyasta matam nabhinam, because there's one principle that a philosopher is a philosopher, a muni is a muni, if he differs in opinion from someone else. So then how do you fix the truth? How do we understand the truth? So how do the acharyas manage the situation according to different time, place, and circumstances? Prabhupada explains in these discussions with one devotee, and he said it is the same principle that Jesus Christ has explained, and it is the same principles that I'm explaining. But he says the acharya, the teacher, he just doesn't know he's not learned just on the ABC. He has his master's degree, he has his doctorate, but where it is required, he explains ABC to the first grade students, and he explains advanced topics and subject matter to the more advanced personalities. That's just one thing. Yes, that is the same essence of spiritual life is being explained, but there's another principle. But what about when one acharya, particularly the Sampradaya acharyas, like the first devotees after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rup Sanatan and Jiva Goswami, and then their student Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya, and Shamananda Prabhu, they were taught and they took on a different kind of approach to preaching. They were distributing books widely, copying it by hand. They had studied under Jiva Goswami, and Jiva Goswami had written so many voluminous scriptures. He calls all these different stanzas in the Sandarbha Anuchedas, because he was just weaving them together, putting it together for us. But then after that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur took a different stand. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he took a different stand. Not a different stand, but like a separate progressive stand. And then Srila Prabhupada also took a different stand. So then how do we reconcile? How do we put it all together and still feel that whatever Lord Chaitanya taught us and whatever he explained and he gave us, we are receiving exactly that? And it is because that last two part of that verse, it says that dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhaya, the essence of spiritual knowledge is contained in the heart of the devotee. Right? So he says, Nasav munir yasya matam nabhinam. It is not just analyzing what this person said and what this person said and what this person said, because philosophers will disagree, and that's what it means to be a muni in Vedic tradition. To be a philosopher is to disagree with the other one. If you have the same opinion, you're not considered muni. Right? And if everyone is analyzing the Vedic literatures in all different ways, like the first line says, Shrutaya vibhinna, tarko pratishta shrutaya vibhinna, then what? But the essence of spiritual life is contained in the heart. Guhya means a secret place, the hiding place, the confidential part of the heart of the devotee of Krishna. So he says, dharmasya tattvam, the essence or the truth of spiritual understanding. Nihitam guhaya. Guhaya. Guha means what? Guha means secret place. Guhya means confidential place, hidden place, which is the cave of the heart of the devotee. And therefore, he says, what you do? Mahajana yanagatha sapanta, we follow in the path of the Mahajan. Isn't that interesting? So Bhishmadev is one such Mahajan. How did he apply it here? He had no way of receiving. He was a very cultured Kshatriya. He was a cultured person. There's no way he could receive all of them nicely, but he knew the essence of receiving someone nicely is from the heart. So Prabhupada is saying there, he spoke very beautifully, very nicely from his heart. You know, he couldn't even, and at one point he said, I couldn't even see my Lord because my ears were tearing and my hands like this, and I cannot even wipe the tears of my eyes to see you properly. And of course, he could not even fold his hand to receive them properly. But it's still the essence of his wonderful reception to all these elites, and especially the Supreme Personality of God as Sri Krishna. He could actually, he could very easily explain the essence. So sometimes you think how Srila Prabhupada, and Shastra is, I mean, I listened to one class by one of my favorite teachers, Bhanu Maharaj, and Bhanu Maharaj explained that Shastra is meant to be like that. And he said that Shastra is meant to be like that, to give different meaning and different explanations, because then it's a very interesting thing he said, and Maharaj, and I'm sharing it here. And he said, it is meant to be like that so that you cannot think that you can actually study it and progress without the help of the devotee, who is embodiment of that. It's meant to be like that. And he said, Krishna made it like that. And I was kind of really taken aback when he said that. And I said, wow. And he said, because then you have to understand that the essence is in the heart of the devotee. So little variations here and little variations there, we have to use our buddhi, our intelligence, and know that this person may be slightly different in his language, he may be slightly different in his mannerism, he may be slightly different in his culture, he may be, you know, in his color, in his creed, but all of that is of no consequence at all. Is of no consequence at all, because the essence of dharma is contained in the heart of the devotee. So we follow that Mahajan. We follow the great. So how many Mahajans we have? We have 12. No, we have a lot more than 12. Prabhupada is a Mahajan. Isn't he, Maharaj? Srila Prabhupada is a Mahajan. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is a Mahajan. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a Mahajan. Rupa Goswami is our Mahajan. You know, and Jiva Goswami, we are following them. You know, and they're explaining the same principles that the other Mahajans have explained. So we're following in this tradition. If you look at what Srila Prabhupada had done, you know, I was kind of enumerating a little bit, and I came to about maybe 15 different innovations that Srila Prabhupada had introduced in our movement that was different to what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had done. You know, I mean, he was, okay, let's start. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, to begin with, I don't know whether I'm going out of the subject, but showing how there's one level of applying time, place, and circumstances, like the examples, you know, of our experiences in West Africa, for example. Or there's another thing that is becoming institutionalized adjustments and innovations that is only possible and only doable by, and Prabhupada makes that point in this purport, that the expert, and he says Bhishma Dev was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching, and therefore he could do that. So Prabhupada is saying that, you know, the great religious preachers or reformers in the world, like himself, of course, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, like Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, they had made so much adjustments for on our behalf. And they have adjusted and innovated so many things. But what is most important thing is they kept the essence of it. So we get the same quality result by following them as we would get by following the predecessor acharyas, even though from one acharya to the other, there may be differences. There may be differences. And the differences are there because they are, out of compassion, the differences are adjusted and innovations are made, because they have to make the adjustments for the patra. The adjustments are made for the people who are to receive this message. Now, if Srila Prabhupada, okay, let's look at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You know, he was one of the major innovations for him was he started using a printing press. He used technology, and he was wearing non-traditional clothes, coats and shoes and sandals. And he was going out and he was meeting very, very important people. In one old copy of Sajantoshani, it was listed a whole list of different personalities Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was going to meet, especially when he was before the age of 25, when he was given the title of Bhaktisiddhanta because of his explanations of Siddhanta Shiromani. You know, that book here, the Surya Siddhanta. You know, it's a very beautiful book. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he actually has beautiful commentaries on it about the fifth canto and everything. And because he wrote that mathematical treatise and he got the title. And after that, he was being received by so many university professors, by deans of colleges, by imported personalities, both from India and from the West. And he was going out and preaching to them and talking to them. That's how he established 64 different maths around India. And then, but one of his major innovations was giving out Brahman thread and mantra diksha, Brahman initiation, to people who were not traditionally born in the Brahmin family. And that almost cost him his life, isn't it? They were making plans to kill him because of that. So that was incredible innovation. Now, we think about that innovation he made, but Prabhupada also took it that my Guru Maharaj did for the purpose of preaching. So he applied the same principle, and he even gave Brahman Diksha to ladies, which was unheard of. He carried out the marriage ceremony of his disciples, which was unheard of. No sannyasi would sit at a fire sacrifice because they don't do that in our tradition, in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. But he did that, and he made so many adjustments. He cooked himself and he served. And of course, the sannyasis in our tradition do cook for the Lord, but so many adjustments he made. So can you imagine all these adjustments? Now they have become standard innovations and adjustments for us to follow. So this is the Mahajans' work. This is the work of the great personalities, the Sampradaya Acharyas. So we see Prabhupada has done an incredible amount of adjustments. He followed the Gaudiya Sampradaya, but not in its orthodoxy. It's like even now you have the Christian Orthodox Church, which is very prevalent in, for example, Greece or in Russia. And then you have the other Christian denominations around the world. I don't know so much about them, but it is kind of the same in our Gaudiya Sampradaya. There's the Orthodox, Gaudiya Sampradaya system, for example, of bhajan and kirtan. It's a very, unique style. But then Narottam Das Thakur made some adjustments. And then later on, you see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he made some adjustments. And then Srila Prabhupada made a whole lot of different adjustments. One important thing also come to my mind, and I think that made a big difference to our Sampradaya, to our movement. Just an open discussion. I'm not sticking to this purport, but as we are among friends, we're just talking. And one interesting innovations when I see, and it's no criticism on anything, on anyone, is when we go to our cousin brothers' temples, our Gaudiya Math devotees' temples, and we see the deity is there, and then we have the Garbhagriha, like you see in Yoga Pit or you see in other temples. Then that is small Garbhagriha, the inner sanctum, centurium of the deity area, is kind of separate from the Kirtan Mandap, Kirtan Mandap, right? And there's kind of a passage in between. So it's like we have the Bhagavad Vidhi and the Pancharatrika Vidhi. The Pancharatrika Vidhi being the deity worship and so on and so forth, and the Bhagavad Vidhi, the preaching and the Kirtan. It is like we follow these two paths, but I never understood before how it was like, either you're doing Kirtan and the deity is being worshipped, but you couldn't be standing and doing deity and Kirtan for the deities like we do in our ISKCON, because the two places is completely separate. So this when Srila Prabhupada went to the West, and he was having to, you know, hire rooms and you know, all different manners of rooms and types of rooms, and he was adjusting to make temples. Then he put the deity, and then we have the temple room, we have the deity room, and then we were all dancing and chanting in front of the deities. But that's not available in the previous, under the rule of the previous acharya. That wasn't available. That, I think, is a very important adjustment, because it makes our access to the deities become so nice. We're standing right in front, and then on top of that, you have a lady singing Govindam Adi Purusam Tamaham Bhajami, you know, Mother Jamuna. So how many adjustments, how many innovations? So our sampradaya is not stilted, because the pure heart of the devotee, such as Srila Prabhupada, of the Sampradaya Acharya, the pure heart of our great preachers and our great sannyasis and gurus and GBCs, they can actually read, and they can adjust, and they can give us what's best. And sometimes we have, I think, if we can understand that this deep, profound foundation from even just 5,000 years ago, how Narad Muni taught and corrected Vyasadev's you know, discrepancy, not discrepancy, but sort of inadequacy in glorifying Krishna, how he adjusted that, and later on, how Sukadeva Goswami, he studied, and how Sutta Goswami performed, you know, carried on the tradition, and so on and so forth. And when you look at all of that, and sometimes out of these we try to nitpick on some small issues and say that the sampradaya or the parampara is breaking down. It's like saying that the huge tidal wave of Sankirtan movement is going to be stopped because some small boats got broken somewhere. It shows that the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and the mercy of the Bhagavad Sampradaya Acharyas is not something small. You know, we can have so many different people can maybe use or misuse or misinterpret, but I think the foundational principles of that, it's not likely to be disturbed. It is somehow going to carry on. And Srila Prabhupada has done such a wonderful, wonderful job, you know, giving us all these, the essence of it, and in so many wonderful ways, and that the tradition is still very strong, and the essence of the spiritual life is being carried forward in such a nice way, and it has now spread all throughout the world. And if you look at some of the basic things that Srila Prabhupada put, is like, for example, the morning program, same times everywhere, 4:30, same tune, same kartal and mirdanga and no harmonium, and same tune, of course, same tune, morning tune. You know, can you imagine? I don't know whether, I mean, I have that very interesting experience, and I can share it here. And I don't know, Maharaj, whether you were in when Srila Prabhupada, the Samadhi was opened, you were there, no? In Mayapur?
Maharaj, you may unmute.
No, I was not there in the Samadhi opening.
So I was there, and I can relate to you one interesting experience. And this puts a lot of emphasis on one very strong tradition that is established so profoundly in our movement. So then when Srila Prabhupada Samadhi opened in I think 99, I don't know, I can't remember the year, maybe 96, I don't know. Yeah, probably 96. And then Prabhupada, Didi was installed in the main Samadhi in Mayapur. So then in the main temple in front of Radha Madhava, we were thinking Sanskara Dhavana Lalita Loka, and so on and so forth. So then it was decided by our seniors that we would sing Samsara Dhava Nalalita Loka at the Samadhi, just like it is done in Vrindavan. And then here we would sing you know, the Sachitanayastakam, you know, Tanna Pramami Sachisuta. So Bhakti Churu Maharaj was put in charge for leading the first kirtan, singing the Ashtakam for Lord Gauranga in front of Radha Madhava, and then the devotees were singing Samsara Dhava Nalalita Loka in front of Prabhupada in Samadhi. And I remember that day after the Mangalarti, not just me, I'm just a nobody, just a small, but then so many other seniors were talking and said, what happened? Everything is gone topsy-turvy. We can't handle this. And there was an emergency meeting of the GBC and they had to turn it back. Because the feelings, what I'm saying is the feelings, the devotees were thinking, we stand in front of Radha Madhava since 1971 or 72, and then we sing Samsara Dhava Nalalita Loka, and then sudden change. So there's some things are just like completely, you know, carved in stone. And then I remember so many of us were feeling completely empty and despondent, even though Samsara was being sang there. So then it was adjusted. Just within that one day, the GBC decided to adjust the feeling based on the feelings of all the devotees who were there. Just one day. I remember that. I will never forget that. So it goes to show that the sentiment of devotion has a lot to say about our tradition. And when you look at this verse, Dharmasya tattam nihitam guhaya mahajanayena gatha sapanta, the essence of it is in the heart of the devotees. So we have to have that faith, and we have to keep following the Mahajans, following the great devotees, and following the seniors, and following those who are leading us. But with intelligence, always using our intelligence, always looking at everything from an intelligent point of view, understanding it from Shastra, and making sure that we don't become blind followers, but we scrutinizingly study the Shastra, properly understand in the right mood. And therefore we can apply this principle of Desh Kala Patra, even though becoming incapacitated sometimes, we can still have the essence of spiritual life, you know, percolate down to those who are, you know, to come down to those we are preaching to, just like we've experienced and we've seen how Srila Prabhupada did so many adjustments. You know, he did so many adjustments. For us, the adjustments of 64 rounds to 16 rounds, would we have had the same ISKCON with 64 rounds? Would it have been purer, bigger? I don't know. But he made that adjustment, and that adjustment is just perfect. You know, so many adjustments. Women disciples to worship the deity on the altar, unheard of. In any Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, unheard of. Right? And then he's naming deities in an unorthodox way. Radha Landanishwara, Radha Parishishwara. Where do you find that? You can imagine. And Prabhupada said, you know, about Parishishwara, he said, there's so many beautiful French girls. So Krishna has come to steal the hearts of these beautiful parish ladies. So he called him Parishishwara. You know, so there is it, you know, so it's interesting. His Mahajans, they adjust and they bring the essence of spiritual life to us. So here, this very simple points in this purport, so I hope I didn't go too much out of sync here. Bhishmadev, he could perfectly perform his duty in mind and words, because he had his heart set in the right place, and there was no need for his arms, just his speech and his heart was there, and he could perfectly perform his duty. So with the right consciousness, the right mood, everything can be used in Krishna's service. And he managed that perfectly well to receive the elite of the universe with his incapacitated body. So this such is the glory of this personality who was the head of all the 8 Vasus, the 8 Vasus being the 8 attendant deities to Lord Indra. And his name was Prabhash. He was a great personality. He was the head of the Vasus. And then he descended in this human society. He became Bhishma Dev, and he gave us wonderful instructions and wonderful display of pastimes with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is such an inspirational figure, because even though he was in the enemy camp fighting Krishna, the essence of his sentiment in his heart was the right. Can you imagine that? That is probably the hardest thing to reconcile. He was in the opposite camp fighting Krishna, but the essence of bhakti was still the right principle, and the right sentiment of bhakti was still there in the heart. Thank you so much. I haven't got much more left to say. I'm running out of ideas and things. So I'll leave it to the devotees to comment and to add and to correct me and to bless me. So thank you so much, Maharaj, for being there. Thank you so much, Salika Prabhu. I don't know whether you're there behind that nice picture of yours. And
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm definitely here, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
This slide.
Thank you so much. I'm sitting comfortably in my room because it's cold here. So anyway, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. That was a very beautiful class. And I mean, the way you presented it is so beautiful. And if it's beautiful, that means that there are also lots of questions. But I have His Grace Kusha Prabhu hand raised up. So, Kusha Prabhu, you can unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
In the course of your lecture, you mentioned we should always follow the Mahajans.
Yeah.
So my question is A and B. Can one choose to follow only one Mahajan and attain perfection? Then number 2, if I decide to follow Bhishma Dev, can I attain perfection if I follow him and work against Krishna, like he did against the Pandavas?
That would be like a philosophical approach. That would be a philosophical approach, because that would not be, that is an intellectual question, and it is not a devotional question. So I would say that it is an intellectual approach to bhakti. And where did that ever work in our sampradaya? How can you choose? You feel and you follow.
Because Bhishma Dev is a Mahajan, and he knows what is right, but he followed but he supported the Duryodhana against the Pandavas, and he still see Krishna at the point of death.
All right. So how do you decide? Based on what?
Because he's a Mahajan. It's one of the 12 Mahajans. You say we should always follow Mahajans.
So it's an intellectual choice.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you follow the heart. You follow. That's what I'm saying. It's a philosophical thought. It's a tricky thing, but I'm trying to catch you. Listen, it's like it's philosophically you make a choice. Like, for example, if you practice Krishna consciousness, okay, how do we know what we are most attracted to? We follow firstly our principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. Okay. Then after a while we realize that I may have, like, for example, I have a deity of Nrsingadev in my altar, and I have Gornitai, right? But every day, and I have a small picture of Panchatat, a small picture of the Sad Goswamis, but other Sad Goswamis are most attracted to Jiva Goswami. It's not a choice. It's a kind of an inclination. It's like a feeling. It's like something that you go to. So it's like you can't say, for example, we can't just say now, okay, let's have this class, okay, because based on what Kusha Prabhu said, why don't we go further and let's ask everyone who else, for example, Mataji Prema Kishore is going to follow. Okay, and Mataji Gayatri, what do you want to follow? You want to follow Prahlad Maharaj, or you want? So it's not quite like that. It's not quite like that. So you follow the basic teachings of the Mahajans. Now, why am I saying that, Kusha Prabhu? Because we follow the Bhagavad Sampradaya. Now, in the Bhagavad Sampradaya, we follow Srimad Bhagavatam. We follow the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So then all the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam are coming through the examples of all the 12 Mahajans and their stories and their different pastimes and different teachings explained in the scripture. So I'm not sure that if you can decide, you can emulate after a while practicing Krishna consciousness, because what they show is you not follow them you follow them personally, but you follow the teachings that they're giving you. And some of the teachings of
Prabhu, we have
yeah
9 process of devotional service. And we have people, one of the Mahajans, they attempt perfection by following only one process of devotional service. So
yes,
if one
each
follow
yes.
the Mahajans in that way, why can't he attempt perfection? Bhishma Dev is one of the Mahajans, and he follow only one process.
Yes, I agree with that. I think on that point you're right, because if you like Shukadev Goswami, he would attain perfection by speaking, and Bhishma Dev by one particular way, and Prahlad Maharaj by Smaranam. Yeah, you can follow the one process, but probably not exactly like each of the Mahajan, because we not have the same tendencies or the same abilities or same kind of condition of life as these Mahajans, but we follow the teachings or we follow the process they give. Because the essence of the process is abhideya. It's following the process. You follow the process. Yeah. So can we decide which process is the most attractive and beneficial for us? That's my question. Maharaj, what do you feel about this?
Yes. at that time, following one of the 9 limbs is possible. One can become successful. At the present time, we don't have the quality of Parikshit Maharaj. We don't have the quality of Arjuna. We don't have the quality of Prithu Maharaj. We don't have the quality of Prahlad. We don't have the qualities. Therefore, the process recommended for us is to follow all, beginning from chanting. And that is what is recommended for this age. That is our deity, the principal deity for Kali Yuga is Harina. Philosophically, yes, philosophically, like you said, yes, it is possible to do one before, but in reality, do we have the article for you to do that? Just even one principle alone to hear. What is the capacity of our hearing? Only 10% of 100 we hear, only 10% we get. And even that 10%, it has nothing to do with the present Kali, the force, the energy Kali is using at the present moment. We cannot stand with it. So we cannot follow that now and become successful.
I think you brought this, if I may add, you brought this interesting concept of something that we discuss at length with the devotees of Bhakti Shastri here, is what you call adhikar.
Yes.
Adhikar means eligibility, which means what we naturally have a tendency to be able to do and also qualified to do.
Yes.
Adhikar is a very difficult word to describe in terms of local sort of English language. Adhikar is like what are we eligible for, and also what our tendency is, and what position and platform we are situated at that makes us eligible to do. Like for example, are we eligible for bhakti in the sense like Haridas Thakur, or we say, okay, like one devotee went to Vrindavan and said to Prabhupada, I'm just going to go to the forest and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to chant 180 rounds. So that would be chanting. So you'd pick up a Mahajan, or, like in that case, Haridas Thakur or some other acharyas, And then, but do we have the adhikar? Very well, where do we have the adhikar to follow that path? Do we have that adhikar? Do we have that bhakti adhikar? That's that shravanam adhikar to say, okay, I can do that. No, we don't. We don't. So that's why you can't intellectually decide, just like the devotee, he went to say, I'm going to chant 180 rounds. Prabhupada said, well, you know, he'd be like a monkey. Markata vairagya, you know, false renunciation. So it's we don't have the adhikar. I don't think we have the adhikar, the eligibility to follow that one path. Therefore, we follow the 9 processes of devotional service, which is possibly all of it to a certain degree, some of it more, some of it less. We follow Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Swaranam. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught Sanatana Goswami about this, and he said, this is the best thing. Prahlad Maharaj gave it to us in Srimad Bhagavatam. And follow the 9 processes of devotional service. Now, if anyone wants to add something else? Kusha Prabhu?
I'm good, Prabhu. Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Thank Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Sahadev, you want to say something?
Now I have a question. I was enjoying the answer you gave, as well as Bhaktisiddhanta Damodara Maharaj's contribution. I think I would have to say, I think I am somehow blessed in the sense that I can't explain it in words, but I just recently started having the realization that, like you were saying, that Krishna intentionally made the scriptures in such a way that you read and you still not understand. That is not just by reading the scriptures that one can know Krishna. You have to be given by somebody. Krishna has to be given by somebody who has Krishna from his heart. So I'm seeing it that from our own point of view, because we wear different colored glasses, so we see things in our own way. Now I may be wearing yellow sunglasses, so I see everything appears yellow to me. So from my own point, I make judgments that, oh, this is a guru, this is a Maharaj, this is a very advanced devotee, but look at what he's doing, look at what he's saying, and thereby attempt to minimize the position of such a person. But I'm realizing that even those seemingly errors do not touch those devotees, because probably it is, like I said, it's just coming from my own colored glasses. So my question is, how do we understand that these personalities are great? They may do some things quite revolutionary, like lots of things Srila Prabhupada did, but that still doesn't make them any less, any little than who they truly are. Hare Krishna.
Yes, but you've gone one step further, because, say, for example, if we read Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita without Prabhupada's purport, that's what I meant. It would make no sense. Without these commentaries and these tika, you know, these explanations, it would make no sense to us, and we would draw all kinds of conclusion reading each of the Sanskrit verses.
I can't think of the name of the guru, but I heard one lecture by Amarendra Prabhu, and he was mentioning one guru, very, very proficient, very, very knowledgeable. And there was one verse that he was asked to speak on, but he never spoke on because his guru never gave purport to that. So he also never gave purport to that. And I think that is still the etiquette we follow in ISKCON. Whatever verse Srila Prabhupada didn't give purport, we skip it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I was once talking to one very senior Vaishnava in our movement, and I said, "How do you know what to speak on when you read a purport?" It's another point. And he said, "Oh, well, because there's so many points, you can just have a general talk on all the points." Or I said, then the class is like what? You know, from A to Z of Krishna consciousness, practically in every purport, on every word you can pick and then you can expand it. And then it's not very nice, very deep. So what? And he said to me, Ms. Maharaj said to me, he said, whatever, when you're reading, jumps to your heart, whatever you feel is you have a stronger appeal to from that, and you speak on that. So it is very much a question of speaking from the heart. So whatever you feel like you have some realization, some understanding, some true sort of realization about, it will jump to you. And then you speak on that. So if that's what I'm saying, it's not so much of an intellectual process. It's not so much of an intellectual.
My other question is the Acharya, Prabhupada was saying in the purport that Bhishma Dev is a Mahajan and he's so expert, he knows how to apply the religious principles according to time, place. And you gave quite a number of examples of some of the adjustments Srila Prabhupada made. You also talked about GBC made adjustment just for that particular morning, but it was only for that morning, and then they reverted back to what the standard has been. So my question is it just any expert preacher who can make such adjustments, or someone who is like specially empowered to make such adjustments? Because such adjustments eventually becomes the standard.
Yeah, actually, that thing about that day when Srila Prabhupada Murti was installed and the Samadhi was open, they thought that the singing Gurvashtakam to Srila Prabhupada would be more appropriate than sing it in front of Radha Madhava. They thought like that. But then it got reverted because of the feelings of all the devotees. It's interesting because logically, yeah, you sing Gurvashtakam in front of the Guru, and you can sing just like we do at Krishna Balaram Mandir. You know, Krishna Balaram Mandir, we sing Vibhava Rishesha in front of Krishna Balaramji, and then we sing Samsara Dhava Nalalita Loka in front of Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi, right? So they thought parallel, but it didn't work out. So then the answer is, to your question, who can do that? So the Acharya is authorized to do it, and he gets a permission from Krishna. He consults Krishna. He knows what to do. And these adjustments and innovations, they are major things. They are major things. We may make, that's why I was in the first part of my discussions saying there's small adjustments we can all make according to time, place, and circumstances. But major adjustments that will mark the history of the Sampradaya, that is something very difficult. And that is not something so given. That's not a given. That's something requires a lot of discussion. It requires a lot of back and forth, and even the recent discussions or recent additions or innovations that have been brought up to, for example, the initiation system in our movement is still not of a kind of 100% settled, because those are major things. And I cannot speak for or against any of it, because it's only time will tell. Because sometimes, we are not even collectively on the same level as Srila Prabhupada, because we're always going to be students. And I think innovations such as Prabhupada had made, I think, me personally, I feel that he's done what had to be done, and we should stick to what he has. He has made a lot of adjustments, you know, and in his books there are details, there are explanations of adjustments. Like, I give you one example. Just something I reflected lately. Like, now there is this whole thing about LGBT. We are open here. We're talking among friends. So if you allow me, with the permission of my senior, Dear Damodar Maharaj and others. So it's like, what's happening now is that women are redefining gender. Who is a woman? Anyone can be a woman if they say they're a woman. This is feminism. And then you have the idea of what's that called? I don't know how to put it. Like, if a person says, I'm a woman, you know, and if he biologically he's a man, but he feels like he's a woman, he can be accepted as a woman. Then Prabhupada very clearly said, it's not, you cannot be in the middle, because that was an issue with Srila. The one person went to Srila Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, he said, what am I supposed to do, Srila Prabhupada? I am born in this body, but I feel like this. And Prabhupada gave one indication, and he said to him, he said, you go decide what you want to be and stick to that. Right? He said, that is there, that instruction is there. And he said, stick to that. Either you can be a man or a woman, but whatever you decide to choose, you stick to that. So given the raving sort of discussion that is going on in the world about gender and biological, you know, markers for gender and sexuality, you know, I go by that one thing. You know, so either you can be a man or you can be a woman. If somehow you have some discrepancy in that, you make a decision and you can be either a man or a woman, but you cannot shift from being a woman to a man to a woman. So that some of the indications are there. So if tomorrow then we start to legislate, okay, we can have a third gender. You know what I'm saying? So we have markers that was given by Prabhupada, because the world is taken us to incredible length, you know, coming out of the traditional role of human beings. So, you know, this could be an issue tomorrow, right?
Yes.
This could be an issue tomorrow that, you know, they decide that we have one way men stands in the temple room and one way the women stand. What about the third gender? Then what do we do? Legislate. You know, this can happen, all these things, you know.
I think it's already happening in a subtle form.
Yeah.
It's already happening.
Interesting. So Prabhupada has given us enough, I think, in his books, and we haven't really understood Srila Prabhupada's purport and Srila Prabhupada books enough. You know, it's an ocean, and we are diving and we are picking things, and we're bringing the jewels up, and we are looking at them, and we are being mesmerized and amazed. And we have so much to learn. So I think if we can stick to what Prabhupada has given us, and like he said, his books or the law book of mankind for the 10,000 years. So, and in the many purports in the first canto, Srila Prabhupada very clearly says that don't try to always change anything. Don't try to adjust all these things all the time. You know, so it's law book of mankind for 10,000 years. So, you know, so let us stick to it. A long Kali Yuga, we only have 10,000. A window of opportunity for us is only 10,000 years out of 430,000 years. So let's not waste it in arguments and trying to, you know, just stick to what Prabhupada has given us. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to add? Maharaj, anything else we can learn from you?
Yeah, Maharaj.
I was appreciating your presentation, analyzing the differences Srila Prabhupada made in his movement, which if when you look at it, it seems as is different from Gaudiya Math. His spiritual master has Gaudiya Math, but he didn't name his society Gaudiya Math. He calls it a different name, International Society of Krishna Consciousness. when you look at all the details of the changes he made. But when you look at it very carefully, you see that he's successful. So like Sade Peru was mentioning, how do we know where someone is going? How do we know where someone is going? We don't just think by the things we do. We can judge him by the result that activity produces.
Yes.
The result. What is the end result?
Right.
So we can see the end result of Prabhupada that he made so many devotees all over the world who are taken to Krishna consciousness. That is the end result of all that adjustment is made.
Yes. Tat Phalena Parichayat. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just by the results.
And you brought so many details from all the areas and put together. It's wonderful. Good presentation. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare
Prabhu and everyone.
Hare
Appreciate
Krishna.
your company in your association.
In absence of further questions, we ask everybody to unmute and we chant big Hare Krishna to appreciate Prabhu. Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama.
Saran Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Thank you very much,
Grace
Prabhuji.
Adwaita Krishna Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you so much.
Jai.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, all my friends and all devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you very much, bro.
Thank you, Kalika.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare